we have a very eminent panel today and major CGD players participating in this panel. This is in alphabetical order of surname. We have Mr. Chiradeep Datta, who's CGD Chief Operations Officer for Karnataka and Kerala and Head of Operations and Maintenance at AG&P. Has over 30 years of experience in operations, project management, and commissioning of cross-country gas pipelines. He's also responsible for delivery of CGD projects in Karnataka and Kerala and operation and maintenance of the company's CGD networks across India. We also have Mr. Pankaj Vadhva, who's Senior Vice President Commercial and Marketing at LNG Think Gas. He started his career in the fertilizer sector in India in the industry, as well as in consulting. And in the past, he's worked with companies like Petronet LNG, Tumble Fertilizers, GAIL India, and Crystal Advisory. And we have Mr. Srinivasan Murli, who's Senior Vice and Maintenance at Mahanagar Gas Limited. He has 35 years of experience in design and engineering, project execution, and operations and maintenance. At Mahanagar Gas, he is responsible for providing leadership, management, and direction for all activities relating to O&M of MGL's assets with maximum uptime. Once again, very warm welcome to all of you. I would also request the participants to keep typing in their questions as we have a very good panel today. And I'm going to begin now with each one of you, just sharing brief remarks about, firstly, what are your current CGD requirements in the sector and how much of gas requirements are being met through RLNG? If we can begin with Mr. Vadhva first. So please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so much. Let me thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present myself today. And thanks to the co-panelists I have. Think Gas as an organization had bid in the 9th and 10th round of the GAs, which were brought out by PNGRB. And as of now, we are into the second year so far as our construction activities are concerned. We have right now commissioned a few CNG stations, 25 plus to be exact, in 6 GAs that we have. And we are in the process of setting up or connecting the other set of consumers. So as of now, the entire requirement, I would say mostly is met through the APM gas allocation, which is for the CNG and household segments. And the requirement for RLNG is yet to come up. But as we go along, when we meet our targets further, then we will be banking more on the RLNG or the imported gas also.
All right. Thank you. Same question to Mr. Datta. What are your current requirements like and what is the mix of domestic gas versus RLNG?
Thank you very much for, first of all, inviting me to this conference. And hi to everybody who is there on this call today. Actually, I am not very sure what these questions have various meanings at various levels. So if you are talking of what the current requirements of the CGD sector are, yes, CGD sector is poised at a crucial stage, very hugely expansive mode with R9 and R10 rounds of bidding. Hello. A huge. Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir. I think Mr. Murli is not on. Was not on mute. That's why you were hearing that sound.
Okay. Thank you. So with the round 9s and round 10 of the bidding, which has taken place in the last 2 years, I mean 18 and 19, from the current sale volumes of around 25 MMSCMD that the sector is seeing at this point in time, the total number of stations at the end of R9, implementation of the R9 would go up to 4,600 and R10 would add another 3,500 CNG stations with about 22 plus 20, around 42 million households connected. And therefore, the requirement of gas, both from the domestic gas as well as for LNG, is poised to grow at almost 16% on the domestic sector, on the PNG sector, and around 19% on the CNG sector. So that's a huge rate of growth for any industry for that matter. However, if the question that you were meaning as to what your requirements of the sector
I meant your gas requirements. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that in that case, that ends my answer. Yes, it is poised for a huge for AGNP. Yes, we are looking for our 12 geographical areas. Uh, we have already set up around 10 of the CNG stations, and going forward, we have a huge number to cater to in the years to come, around 100 and 200 odd CNG stations in the coming year, CY21, uh, with also an equally impressive numbers of the household connections. So the gas requirement is going to grow up at a phenomenal explosive phase. We also have another sector which is in the sort of kind of related to the CGD sector, is about the direct dispensing of LNG, which various state governments like Kerala and Maharashtra has already committed to convert a lot of long haul buses, as well as we have another very interesting thing coming up in Kerala where convert all their boats to LNG, or the fishing boats into LNG, and also the long haul trucks that we have across the country. So in short, a very exciting phase coming up in the coming 5 years.
And sir, how much of RLNG are you importing right now to meet your requirements?
Yeah. Sorry, I missed that. As regards RLNG, we at this point in time, as we all know, RLNG is a huge important part of the energy basket, specifically because domestic gas is APM gas, in fact, is under a huge pressure because because the availability is limited, and B, the requirement from all kinds of sectors, not just the CGD sector, but also the power, fertilizer. And we hope that the current priority allocation in the domestic sector remains the way it is, but nobody can be absolutely certain about these policy decisions. And RLNG will continue to be in the CGD space, will continue to be growing from the current around 48 to 49%. It will go up to definitely more than 60% in the fuel space come 2025. That's the estimated numbers.
Great. I'll go to Mr. Murli now and come back for specific questions. So, Mr. Murli, how are you meeting your gas requirements, and how much of LNG are you importing right now at MGL? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, you able to hear me now?
Yes, sir.
See, our total requirement of gas per day is around 3 million. And of this 3 million, almost 70% of it goes to the domestic and the CNG. CNG and domestic comprise of between 70 and 80%. The balance 20% of the gas is RLNG. Now, we don't directly import RLNG. We, in fact, get it through the various companies like Petronet, or for that matter, even GAIL. So all these companies, they bid. We have a system by which they will have to bid for the requirement, and based on which we place an order. It is kind of a spot gas or a term contract, depending upon whatever is suitable for us, we do. So almost 30% of it is RLNG. It can vary between 20 to 30% depending on the per day requirement. But the commercial establishments and the industrial establishments, they are not catered through the APM gas. They are catered through the RLNG only.
Back to you, sir. I'll go to Mr. Wadhwa now. And in fact, all of you, if you could just now throw some light on what is the kind of LNG, small scale LNG capacity that you are looking at in terms of setting up of satellite stations or LCNG stations, and how viable do you think small scale LNG is as an option for the CGD sector? I'll begin with Mr. Wadhwa first.
Sure, Ritika, that is perhaps the most important question. Because if you look at the vast expanse of the 9th and 10th round GAs, many of them, and specifically many of the charge areas within the same GAs, they are far, far away from the pipeline connectivity. So as a concept, the LCNG station has been developed, which is a virtual pipeline. Put it simply, so it has replaced the need for a actual pipeline. You load liquid at the import terminal, bring it through cryogenic tankers, and bring it to the location where you need it. You set up a virtual CGS and have a mini LNG terminal, which will have unloading of liquid into a fixed storage. Then, depending on the needs of the consumer, you vaporize it. For a industrial commercial consumer, you have a low pressure vaporization or low pressure gas. For consumers which are transport sector like CNG, you have a high pressure outlet. We as an organization have set up the first LCNG station in Bhopal. It is on the verge of commissioning now in the next, I would say, couple of weeks, working hard on that. And I believe from a perspective of CAPEX comparison, it compares very well with any virtual CGS compared to any pipeline CGS on a CAPEX front. And on the operation side, my co-panelists and other colleagues will be here with me. It is cheaper than the use of compressors that are there for CNG dispensing. So overall, I would say that it is a chain which is on a CAPEX front and OPEX front very comparative. What comes as an issue or an impediment, as you asked, is the distance that the liquid has to travel from the import terminal, which has to be a coastal location, to the hinterland where you are taking this volume. And the larger the distance, the transportation cost increases. There are a couple of solutions which are now widely prevalent, although we have yet to see that in India. However, the use of ISO containers is prevalent in various locations across the world. And I believe it is quite possible to bring down the cost of transportation and make it almost equivalent to the pipeline transportation if that were to be done. In half a minute, I'll give 3 examples which are prevalent across the world. There is a chain for ISO container which has been developed from Lisbon to Madeira Island. There is a power project of about 54 megawatts. So a set of 55 ISO containers, they are loaded onto trucks at Lisbon LNG terminal, Seen LNG terminal, taken by road to the nearest port, put onto the containers, shipped to that location, put back on the trucks, and they go to the power plant. And this is a chain very well established. The second example is in the US. So from Jacksonville to Caribbean, there is a chain of ISO containers which are feeding various locations. And very recently, an agreement has been done by a company called Fortis BC in British Columbia, Canada, and they will be selling about 500,000 tons of LNG through ISO containers to China. So these are the examples which are very well proven, and I believe our own statutory organizations in India, including PESO, they are working towards creating an enabling environment so that use of ISO container comes up. The second enabler is the use of LNG into cylinders. So again, from the perspective, although it is yet to be tested in India, a regulatory environment exists, but the specific approvals are yet to be awarded. It is doing very well in Singapore, where the small cylinders like 210 water liter capacity or even bigger than that, they are able to carry LNG. And as you know, since it is transported in liquid form, it is able to give much more energy than what is given by the traditional mode. So I believe these two issues, as soon as they are resolved or an enabling environment is set up, of course, keeping all the safety considerations in mind, and LNG inherently is much safer as compared to its other variants like CNG, where you have a huge pressure coming up. And then my colleagues earlier, they spoke about LNG usage in various sectors, so that we can discuss later. But these two things, ISO container and LNG cylinders, they are going to be a game changer in the coming few, I would say, years into the LNG space.
And Mr. Vadba, you also mentioned that one LCNG station is about to be operational in the next 2 weeks. So what are your future plans in this area? Like in the next couple of years, how many LCNG stations are you looking
at? So certainly the plans are large, because as I mentioned, it is not only us, but other players like AGNP or some of those players who have no access to the pipelines into their geographical areas which have been awarded recently. So we are not going to be the only one. But yes, our LCNG station that we have will be the first of its kind in the entire state of Madhya Pradesh. And it will be able to, I would say, provide natural gas on a low pressure, on a medium pressure, and a high pressure, all put together, as also have facilities for dispensing LNG into the heavy duty vehicles and filling of LNG cylinders. So it is going to be a very unique kind of a situation where we'll have all these things available.
All right. I'll go to Mr. Datta now. If you could just highlight the plans that you have in terms of SSLNG capacity, LCNG stations or satellite stations. Are you looking at and setting up any of these?
My connectivity is a bit weak, I believe. I'm not very sure you are able to hear me clearly. First of all, thank you. I completely agree with Mr. Wadhwa when he talked about the capacities and the kind of efforts that are being put up and the kind of advantage that an LCNG station poses over the conventional pipeline. See, there are the LCNG stations that the one that we are going to commission in a couple of weeks at Jodhpur will typically have a capacity of around 0.3 to 0.35 MMSCMD. The way you look at it, there are various ways of calculations, and therefore I'm just putting a number 0.3 MMSCMD. So these are small modular stations, and why it has a major advantage over conventional pipelines are the following. A, you can add on to the capacity or you can remove the capacity the way you want. So your capex cost that you have to upfront has to be dependent on the kind of volumes that you are expecting in the markets where you are serving. Rather than putting up a pipeline of, say, a 12-inch pipeline or an 8-inch pipeline, which can serve a much higher volume, the capacity utilization of a conventional pipeline typically in India takes something around 7 to 8 years. And in some cases, for example, some of the key cross-country pipelines in the country are even today at a capacity utilization of around 40 to 45%, not more than that, or maybe 50% at max. Whereas when you are talking of a small capsule of an LNG truck traveling between a port to a GA, a geographical area, you are utilizing the capacity 100%. So even if you on a apple-to-apple basis, if you find that the capex costs are or the opex costs are higher, the actually if you see the capacity utilization wise per MMBTU of cost, they compare admirably. Obviously, the capex costs are obviously much lower, but even the opex costs are very much comparable. The second thing that we have often seen and people tend to ignore is that long cross-country pipelines or a long sub-transmission pipeline. In our case, we have to have a number of very long sub-transmission pipelines between the trunk pipeline and the GA, sometimes extending over hundreds of kilometers, 100 to 150 kilometers. The inventory carrying cost of the gas in the pipeline is substantial, which actually has no use except for just to carry the inventory. For example, if you have to charge a pipeline at a pressure of 20 bar or 19 bar for a 100-kilometer location, that amount of gas at all points of time needs to be there in the pipeline to sustain the business and has actually no value. So in case of an LNG model, you do not have a high LNG, inventory carrying cost, because it is only the LNG that you are carrying on the trucks or putting in the small modular LNG tanks. That's the LNG inventory that you are carrying, and the cost is much lower. So A, modular capex, B, the lower inventory carrying cost, and 3, the time that you save to reach the far-flung pockets of the GA is phenomenal. For example, these days, gone are the days when the entities used to be one city GA. For example, the city of Delhi or the city of Mumbai or Ahmedabad, where that one GA with a particular reach. Now the GAs that are being bidded and by PNGRB are having an area of say 25,000 square kilometers, comprising 3 districts, sometimes 2 states or 3 states. Such large geographical areas anyway would be requiring a mechanism to have the gas reach to every pocket of the GA. And that is what the entire intention of the whole process is. And that can only be achieved when you have a micro distribution model of carrying the gas, storing it into small containers at various locations, and then serving the local communities. So absolutely, both on the starting of for starting early revenues for the entity, for giving the gas to the markets at far-flung locations. This model has, I mean, conventional pipelines do not come anywhere in comparison to SL's LNG. It is definitely a far superior model for the time being. And of course, concerns of safety will always be there. Road safety in India is a prime concern that can always be addressed through proper training and with proper guidance to and monitoring of the trucks lying across on the Indian roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Datta. I'll go to Mr. Murli now. Yes, sir.
See, madam, Mr. Pankaj and Mr. Chiradeep have pointed out, certain good things about, using these, having these LNG terminals. While I totally agree that the new GAs have an issue of, 2 square kilometers in area, but the problems with LNG is also very significant, particularly if you see from the usage perspective of the natural gas for city gas distribution companies. And typically, if you have a customer base of say 1 lakh customers, we say that the customer consumes around half a SMD standard cubic meter per day. But the half a standard cubic meter what he consumes is during a period of 3 to 4 hours of his cooking. Now, the whole half a standard cubic meter, if you have a population of 1 lakh domestic customers, so it means that every day the consumption is 50,000 standard cubic meters. But this 50,000 standard cubic meters is consumed over a period of 4 hours. Now, that would mean that the consumption is around 12 to 15,000 standard cubic meters per hour. The similar is the case with the CNG stations also. The CNG filling happens particularly during the daytime and in the evening time. When because the CNG is consumed mostly by the auto rickshaw people or the taxi people who, like to fill gas in the morning and in the evening during the change of shift. So here also the problem is, it's not a base load, it's all peak loads. So suppose for instance, you have say, you have a GA which is having a lack of customers and some 20 CNG station. Each CNG station, if you assume, sells around 2000 kg. So it means that around 40,000 kgs of CNG is being sold, which is equal to close to around 60 to 65 standard cubic meters per day. And a lack of domestic customer if you have, which is around 50,000 standard cubic meters per day. So a requirement of 1,20,000 standard cubic meters per day spread over a period of 4 hours. That would mean that almost 30,000 standard cubic meter per hour would be the requirement. Between 25 and 30,000 standard cubic meters will be the requirement per hour. Now the problem with the LNG terminals is that you have a 100 KL tank which can hold around 60,000 standard cubic meters, and even suppose you have say 300 KL tanks and then your vaporizers. I have a feeling that we may not be able to take care of the peak load in spite of having for a simple 1,20,000 standard cubic meter per day, a very small GA if you really see. That also will be very difficult to cater by having an LNG plant. Like what Chiradeep is saying, I agree that laying pipelines is expensive and all that. But the pipeline, the better advantage of pipeline is can take care of all these peak loads. But in case of a LNG station, taking care of peak load is going to be a phenomenal task because the tanker itself can 20 KL tanker. If you see what is primarily used in India for transportation, that would carry 40 KL LNG tankers are available. Like 21,000 to 22,000 standard cubic meters it can carry. Now for a peak load of say 25,000 standard cubic meters per hour, during that particular time, the amount of unloading and amount of tankers, LNG tankers would be required is around in a particular station would be somewhere around 3 to 4. and then that you see you can unload in one tank, and you can send the gas in another tank. So the tanks are also, you can't unload and load in the same tank. So that also is a constraint. So LNG terminal, small scale LNG terminal, operating them would be a Herculean task. It will be phenomenally complicated, because you will be having tankers to load the LNG storage vessel, and then from the other end you will have to have LCVs which will be decanting from those stations and going to the various CNG stations. So it will become very complicated. For a small size of say 20,000, 30,000 standard cubic meter per day, this may work. But the minute the the CNG starts scaling up, then all these people who are currently today wanting to put in LNG stations to operate the CGD company will find it phenomenally difficult. It will become a big challenge for all of them. So, but MGL, for instance, we are going to put LNG stations, but that will be particularly used for the trucking system only, for the the LNG trucks which will be coming through the to the Golden Quadrilateral, to the national highways. For that purpose only, we'll be using these LNG stations. So we won't be having a big station. We'll be having a small station only to cater to the few LNG trucks which will be plying around in that place. So and once the LNG trucks increase, and you will have more of these trucks flying, long haul trucks flying, then we may scale up the LNG. But that is not a big challenge for us. But for the challenge would be for all these bidders in the 9th and 10th round who are trying to use LNG for transporting and selling gas. For them it will be a big challenge. That is what is my feeling. Operating the CGD industry for 25 years. This is what I have learned, that it's not a simple affair. It's highly complicated.
So, Mr. Vaibhav, would you like to add anything to what Mr. Murali said?
Oh, certainly. Yes, I must say that Mr. Murali, of course, because he is handling very, very large numbers in MGL. Yeah. So actually, LNG or LCNG station is not in a position to do that. Yes. Here we are talking of the smaller GAs, where the volumes which MGL is handling today, it might take years and years to reach those levels. So that is one thing. Of course, as Mr. Murali himself said, that MGL is also trying to set up LNG dispensing units. And I'm sure the panelists and the participants agree that these all are modular in nature. So it's not an issue at all to scale up. If you have sufficient land available with you, you can set up bottle sizes. Today, of course, the prevalent sizes are 56 meter cube or 113 meter cube, but you can go up to 256 and beyond also. So all those are in the offing. I mean, these will come up as the market demands. Maybe leave alone the technical aspects. Again, I would say that these are scalable very much, and they can, as we go along, meet the larger requirements also. But I would agree with Mr. Murali when he said that his requirements in MGL, or if we were so large that the requirement for piped connectivity of gas. So certainly pipeline has its own inherent advantages. But here the issue is that if the pipeline tap off is say 150 kilometers or 200 kilometers away, then besides the cost, it is also the time factor. Now, if you wait for 3 years, 4 years for the connectivity to come, by the time your marketing exclusivity is over. So instead of that, you are trying to scale up the market quickly. And maybe if the volumes come to those numbers, and I would be really thankful to Mr. Murali if we are able to achieve those numbers, large numbers which MGL has. I'm sure we will have the pipeline connectivity coming in quickly.
Great.
Excuse me, madam, just a minute. See,
yes,
the numbers which I have told you is for a 1 lakh domestic customers and 20 CNG stations. It's a very small number. Even for that number also, this the modular LNG terminal will have a big challenge. It is only good for say some 10-20,000 domestic customers and maybe 7 or 8 CNG stations. It may be good enough. But the minute the numbers keep going, then you'll have a big problem. So you'll have to probably look at acres of land where you can scale up pretty fast also. But if you are able to do that, fine.
Mr. Datta, would you like to add?
Yeah. I just don't want to get into a debate of this sort, because we all know Mr. Murali, with his vast experience in operation and maintenance over the years, has pointed out issues which are very close to his heart, and they are very close to my heart as well. I mean, I am totally in sync with the way he is seeing the kind of challenges that an operations person will be facing going forward. But I'm giving you two examples, Bagalkot and Mumbai. I mean, are they comparable? Mumbai has the connectivities to vast trunk pipelines like the DUPL passing through it. And Bagalkot has a pipeline connectivity which is in excess of 180 kilometers. Anandpur Kadapa, 190 kilometers. How do you serve those consumers in such far-flung areas from the trunk pipeline? You obviously, for a 190 kilometers pipeline in India, I mean, laying pipelines in India, I have been a cross-country pipeliner all my life, been working in GAIL or in Reliance or currently here. I know the kind of challenges that pipeline laying and construction poses in terms of various kinds of farmer unrest, various interest groups, everything. Nothing happens in India, especially for cross-country pipelines, in less than 3.5 years. If you were to wait for 3.5 years to get a pipeline connectivity, then the whole purpose of this various rounds of bidding is lost. So what we need to essentially do is to make the food available on the plate to the people who are there today, not developing just because gas is not available. And as the things scale up, obviously with money flowing in and as revenues coming up, anyone would obviously lay a pipeline, because pipeline as such is a safe mode of transportation. Pipeline is also something that gives you a very low operational expenses. But to start with, for the 3.5-4 years, when the ramp up is taking place, when the customers are getting used to the process of using natural gas as opposed to other fuels like fuel oil, SKO, diesel, LPG, when you have to shift them, and the entire South Indian market is on LPG today. Now, if you want, or major mid-scale industries are all on fuel oil and other polluting fuels. Now, how do you tap that market? Obviously, an opportunity cannot be allowed to wait for 3 years. So therefore, the concept of bringing a small-scale LNG, serve the consumer, develop the market, and lay your pipeline in the interim. So that's my submission on that. And obviously, challenges of how to serve the peak period customers, peak duration customers, and all. These are all operational challenges and can always be mitigated by putting additional vaporizers and having a proper documented procedure for loading, unloading, timing them properly. So these are challenges. Obviously, these are challenges, but this can be handled through a proper operational procedure and supported by a proper system to guide the operational engineers. Thank you.
The next question is for Mr. Wadhwa. You were talking about ISO containers and how they should be allowed. So, to what is too much for which these ISO containers are cost effective?
A very pertinent question, Ritika, I must say. However, since the concept is yet to be proven within India, I would hesitate to put a number to that. But let me answer it in a different manner. Today, there is liquid which is carrying on a truck mounted semi-trailer. So this liquid, it's a 40-feet container, and it carries roughly 16 to 17 tons of LNG per truck. Now, once you shift to ISO containers, as we all know, ISO containers they can be carried on multimodal transports. So a full wagon or a full rake, whatever you call in railways, you can carry so many ISO containers in one go. So this means the per unit cost will substantially come down. So from that perspective, and similarly, as I mentioned earlier, the models which have been proven, the container vessels, they are also carrying multiple containers in the one ship. So that way, these are ways to reduce. But still, if you were to insist, I would say moving about 1 million tons per annum of LNG will not be a big deal through the ISO containers. It can be very easily done. once the proper chain has been established.
And is there any restriction on the vehicle type used for transportation of LNG through ISO containers?
Not to my knowledge, maybe my co-panelists, if they can help me out on this, I'll be happy.
Mr. Datta or Mr. Murli, is there any restriction on vehicle type which is used for transportation of LNG through ISO containers? In case they are
see, it depends. There is no as such restriction. The capacities, the length of the vehicle, the capacity of the vehicle is the limitation, because in India we have a lot of bridges which don't have that kind of capacity to handle the big container. So the Motor Vehicle Act is the only place where you can understand, whether this will be able to fit it in a container or not. Because unlike in developed countries where the roads are much better and you have all power steering and all kind of facilities in the vehicle, so there they allow. But in India, there would be size restrictions. We'll have to figure out that what is the maximum size which can be accommodated in a trailer. We'll have to find that out. Depending upon the the situation, we'll have to figure out maximum capacity.
Next question for Mr. Datta. You had mentioned that safety is a big concern, especially for this heavy load that goes on roads. So, do you think that small-scale LNG ships can be considered as an option for transportation?
Definitely. First of all, the first part of the question about the road traffic in India, which also Mr. Murli touched upon, about the turning radiuses and about the various ghat sections, the mountainous sections where the trucks, big trucks would face certain amount of difficulty in terms of negotiating the bends as well as in maintaining a certain kind of speed. I definitely think that there will be a lot of surveys that need to be done before choosing a particular route, and then to stick to that route and not take deviations to the route. So we in AGNP have developed a vehicle tracking system wherein we come to know exactly where the truck is on which route, and whether they have taken a deviation to the route, and the kind of speed they are traveling in, and the kind of traffic violations that the driver may or may not be committing. We also need a huge amount of training to be done to the drivers, because this kind of driving is not like a conventional four-wheeler license. It is something which is a far more hazardous fuel than many other fuels, and that requires a certain sense. And in fact, if a particular company is at any point of time having some 100 trucks plying on their roads, it is going to be a logistics challenge for the logistics manager, and therefore it has to be properly supported with a SCADA-based vehicle tracking system, which is hooked on to the SAP SND module, so that you have, in a seamless manner, having a knowledge of the levels of at your various tanks at your LCNG stations, to the vehicles that are moving into the LCNG station from various ports, to the loading, unloading time, and the stoppage time that the trucks are seeing at this point in time. Maybe there will be a seasonal variation. The speeds will be definitely lower during the rainy season, during the autumn season, and it will be faster during the other season. So there will be a lot of things, and each company will gain through its experience as we get into this. But it's definitely a challenging thing, and therefore, it will require a comprehensive set of standard operating procedures and a data gathering mechanism to understand how the behavior of the various components of this logistics system. The second question which you have asked is about the inland waterways or the high sea. Oh yeah, that's a very interesting question, and AGNP is also a part in its group of companies that we are. We also have Gas and Tech and a few other companies, Capta Shipping, which is into transportation of LNG in small vessels and large vessels, of course. In small vessels, especially along the coastlines of Karnataka Kerala, Tamil Nadu, we are also looking at options of transporting the LNG from terminals such as Kochi or Dabhol. Dabhol may not be possible at this point in time, but Dahej definitely, Ennore, where we can think of transporting the LNG and unloading the LNG at our ports near the GA, from where then it can be trucked to the GA. Yes, definitely, especially in Kerala, this is definitely an option where pipelines are very difficult to lay, and the roads are in general, I would say, quite challenging to navigate. So definitely we are looking at that option as well.
Great. I'll hand over to my colleague Nikita now. She will take a few audience questions. Nikita, if you can start with some of the audience questions.
Sure, Ritika. There is one question to Mr. Wadhwa from Mr. Manish Malhotra. He's saying that not many Indian ports have the infrastructure and prerequisites to handle ISO containers. So what are your comments on that?
Certainly, he's right there. There are two parts to the LNG movement. So most of what we were discussing till now was the movement inland, meaning thereby that there are truck loading bays within the current LNG import terminals. We have 6 of them in the country today, and a few more are coming up. So you can fill an ISO container on those truck loading bays and move them hinterland. Yes, you can also think of perhaps what he means is when you import LNG directly into ISO containers from other countries. So from that perspective, since these are special category fuel, they need to have facilities for stacking and storage at the ports itself. So those development is yet to be done, but these are not very difficult things, and not much of capex would be involved there.
The next question is from Mr. Mehul Surti. Maybe Mr. Datta could answer that. Do we are required to have another LNG setup in absence of steel pipeline?
I'm not very sure I got the question. Do we have what, another LNG setup?
Are we required to have another LNG setup in the absence of steel pipeline?
See, steel pipeline is a requirement. I mean, they do not, LNG and steel pipeline do not vie with each other as competitors. They complement each other. The idea is that for the 8 years of exclusivity, or whatever is the period of exclusivity that the GA entity has, you do not wait for a good period of time, say half of that time, to create a steel pipeline. And so the initial development phase of the GA in terms of the gas infrastructure and in terms of convincing people to convert into gas from whatever fuel they are using at that point in time, we need an upfront mechanism, and that mechanism is being provided by LNG. However, as the development takes place, as the consumptions grow up, continue to grow, the pipeline option, it will then complement the LNG infrastructure, and the entire, as I have mentioned before, each of these GAs are vast areas, 25,000 square kilometers. Now compare that with this area of a city like Delhi or Bombay, which has much bigger volumes, but much smaller area. So it's much easier to cater to a city of that sort, although Bombay and Delhi comes with their own set of challenges, no questioning that. However, how do you transport the gas to far-flung areas of a GA without having a distributed model? And therefore, they do not compete, they complement each other. So that would be my answer to this question.
My next question is to both Mr. Wadhwa and Mr. Datta, as both of the companies are setting up LCNG stations. Sir, what about the cost of the end product that is going to come from the LCNG stations? How is it as compared to a station which is being set up using a domestic natural gas supply? So what are the cost economics? How do we compare the cost? Maybe Mr. Wadhwa could answer that first. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Maybe I'll request Mr. Datta to take it up, and I can.
Mr. Datta,
Thank
please.
you. Yeah, thank you, Pankaj. The cost, you were saying the comparison between APM and LNG, they don't compare. I mean, obviously, the question falls ab initio. The comparison can be between a piped supply to a city gate station vis-a-vis the gas supplied through LNG trucks to an LCNG station and then distributing it. So obviously, there are the following components. A, the cost price of the gas at a port, at a import terminal, say PLL at Dahej or PLL at Kochi or wherever. So that cost remains the same. Now, what is the second component? In case of a pipe gas, you have this regasification cost at the terminal. Okay, that in case of an LNG truck doesn't exist. However, in LNG truck, there is something called a loading charge of loading the LNG into the truck. And the third component in case of pipe gas, obviously, I'm not talking of taxes. The taxes are always there, and government of India is always very keen on having their fair share of taxes. So leave that aside. Then you have the third component of transporting the gas to the GA through the pipeline. A pipeline with its substantial amount of capex also comes up with this transportation tariff. And now that we have unified tariff, it is good for some, bad for some. But yes, there is a transportation tariff attached to it. If you see in case of LNG, you have the tariff, the road transportation tariff attached to it. Then you have at the CGS station the cost of putting up the infrastructure and its O&M cost. In case of LCNG station, we have the same thing, the same infrastructure, except what the addition is that there will be vaporizers which do not take a substantial regasification cost because most of them are driven by various other modes of energy usage. Yes, there will obviously be a capex component to it. So if you say apple to apple comparison, if you make the cost of the landed price of gas at your geographical area, there is in fact LCNG at times, because of its low capex cost, has, and if you consider the interest during construction and the depreciation and all things put together, you find LCNG model is actually at times a better model to start with. Maybe 7 years down the line or 5 years down the line, there will be a certain point at which the pipe gas will be more attractive. But for the initial phase, there will be from 0 to say 5 or 4.5. The LCNG model will definitely be more attractive, and both to the consumer as well as to the entity.
Thank you, sir.
And
Mr.
if you
Wadhwa,
allow
your
me to
thoughts on the same?
supplement Mr. Datta,
Yes.
so he has very beautifully.
Yes, Mr. Wadhwa. Yes, Mr. Wadhwa, please go ahead, sir. How to
Okay,
ask you about
sure. So Sure. So I think Mr. Datta gave a very good account of the economics cost, and I also firmly believe that if we were to compare traditional CGS with the virtual CGS, both on the OpEx front, these things are better. Carrying LNG by road versus transportation of natural gas by pipeline is certainly one area where there is a differential. But let me also put it this way, that the solution through the ISO containers perhaps could make this option of carrying LNG, if not cheaper, at least comparative to the piped gas. Just for the benefit of the participants and audience, I would like to compare the APM. This is one area of interest for everyone. And as we know, we are feeding CNG and household through the APM volumes. There is a substantial difference, because when you are swapping APM gas into LNG or carrying to such stations, so you see there is a jump of about 50 to 60% more costs are added. they are beyond the control of GAIL. There are certain notional numbers also which get added, like contractual path of carrying natural gas, say from Hazira to the Dahej, when actually it is not flowing. So there are certain costs which I GAIL is also trying to soften the impact of. But if you were to compare an FOB price of natural gas, the APM natural gas at Gujarat versus the price of swap LNG, the swap LNG pricing is almost 60% costlier than the gas pricing.
Thank you, Mr. Vadva. My next question is to Mr. Murli. Sir, recently PNGRB had come out with the regulation permitting any entity to set up LNG station without having any authorization. So, sir, how is that going to impact the CGD companies, the existing CGD companies?
Madam, see, the regulation is with regards to setting up of an LNG station. Okay, and this LNG station would be used for fueling the trucks, which is the long haul trucks. And you can't set up an LNG station and have an LCNG station, and then you can even sell gas to domestic or commercial or industrial consumer in that particular. There you can't do. If you have to sell the gas only to the long haul trucks, then anyone can put up an LNG station in any part of the country. But the condition is that we must have LNG trucks, because LNG trucks are also expensive. So none of the transporters are currently interested to invest in an LNG truck. So the government wants that there should be LNG stations available in plenty all across the country, so that these trucking companies or the transportation companies can invest in an LNG infrastructure for their trucks, because LNG trucks are also a bit expensive when you compare it with the normal diesel trucks. There will be no competition from if anybody wants to set up a LNG station across the country. And currently also, I think the minister a couple of weeks back had inaugurated almost 70 or 80 LNG stations across the country, of which IOC, HPC, Indian Oil, Petronet LNG, NGL, all of us have contributed to doing the Bhumi Pujan, and it will take a year and a half for the stations to become operational. But then it will not impact the CGD companies in any way, in my opinion.
Next question is to both Mr. Datta and Mr. Vadva. Sir, in the morning also, this issue was raised that there are only 2-3 Indian contractors that are involved in setting up LCNG stations. So what are the specific issues that you are facing with respect to limited contractual capacity that we have right now? Maybe Mr. Datta, you could answer that first.
Not much. I don't think, obviously going forward, we are going to have many more vendors vying for this. Obviously, lesser number of competition is always having an impact on the prices of the construction and on the supply of equipment. However, I think that this is something we are at the very beginning of a long phase of seeing an LNG infrastructure, small scale LNG infrastructure in the country. And I'm sure there are very many people who are watching this space with active interest, and going forward, I'm sure there will be many more vendors who will be coming up with their wares. Already we have few gigantic manufacturers who have already come to India, and they are in the process of getting into the fray. So the current ones, including VRB, Cryo, and Charts and all that, are not the only ones. They probably are the ones who are there, present in the market and position themselves well. But going forward, I am sure this space is going to see a huge competition, given the amount of LNG infrastructure that this country promises to build in the years to come. AGNP, for example, is very hopeful that going forward, these prices that we are seeing today for the LNG tanks and the vaporizers and things of that like would stay stable, and in fact the prices may even see a slight reduction over a period of time. So I'm not concerned today about the prices and about the lack of competition. This is going to grow in a very big manner.
Mr. Wadhwa?
Yeah, well said, Mr. Datta. So certainly, so far as the availability of equipment is concerned, as of today, it is available aplenty. But I would certainly like to mention that the more vendors will come and certainly it will put a pressure on the equipment. Even today, although we have three manufacturers within the country, a lot of critical equipment like pumps, they are imported. So we have to sort of look forward, as Mr. Datta said, to a wider competition, more and more vendors coming in, and maybe more and more equipment from countries who are producing it at a lower cost, being allowed to be that will certainly bring, I would say, more competitiveness into this and a reduction into the prices of critical equipment. And I would say even the quality of material. I mean, today, of course, because we have a few and far between stations, but even the quality of material which is being used will also improve. This was it from my side.
I have just one last question from my side. Sir, transportation cost is one of the most important component for SSLNG. So what is being done to optimize that cost component? Maybe Mr. Wadhwa, you could answer that.
Sure. So one, as of today, once the scale goes up, then you are able to have such models where there is a better utilization of the same resource. As of today, if you look at it, we have dedicated infrastructure. So if it is point A to point B, where the consumer is, and point A is where the terminal is there, you have a dedicated fleet of trucks. And this is how even the approvals come. But as we grow in volumes, there will be a lot more sharing of that infrastructure or that, I would say, trucks and all, which can move from multiple locations. And we will have more efficiency coming in. And coupled on that, as I mentioned earlier a couple of times, would be introduction of other modes of transport like ISO containers, which would not only be able to reduce the costs, but also be more efficient in terms of the standardization. So these two things will certainly bring in more efficiency. There are also aspects relating to the use of these movable vehicles, or what you call dispensing through the container itself directly into the consumer requirement. So right now the requirement is to have a stationary or a fixed storage tank at the end of the consumer or the CGS. But I believe as we go forward, we might have, as happens in other countries more developed into this field, a direct, I would say, outlet or a direct dispersal of LNG from the container itself. That will certainly further bring down the costs. So all these will help to optimize.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.